we have some other veterans in the audience that are not up here, and if you are a veteran, would you mind just standing up? Thank you. So with that, Ann, would you care to start us off?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So I was 18 years old in 1969, about to be drafted. So I joined the Navy instead. I signed up for 6 years in the nuclear power program. I ended up as a nuclear trained electrician on a nuclear submarine. We did the Cold War stuff of following Russian subs. Our job was to kill them before they could launch their missiles at the United States if we went to war. But we also did some really things I'm more proud of, like rescuing the crew of a down B-52. 5 sailors landed, airmen landed in the water in the middle of a typhoon. And we surfaced, bobbed around on the surface and rescued 5 of the 6 crew and received some accolades for that and awards. So I'm proud of that. And we also patrolled, the reason I'm wearing this hat and a member of this organization where we're meeting, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, is my submarine patrolled the coast of Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And we stopped Red Chinese trawlers that were trying to resupply the Viet Cong with ammunition and supplies. And we were not at war beyond 13 miles, so if they patrolled like 15 miles out, we couldn't touch them. But we would watch them through the periscope. They would think ultimately they were not being watched and make a break for the coast, and we would then stop them. So also proud of that because it saved lives. Other than that, it's just operating a lot of intense, complicated machinery, which set me up for the rest of my life. My career as an engineer and ended up designing factories for Intel Corporation. All of it, even though I got my degrees, I got a math degree on the GI Bill, the Navy experience is what set me up for life. So that's my service story.
My name is John. My service career was not nearly as exciting as hers. I was drafted the day I graduated from high school. Okay, welcome to the world. I had very little, in fact, I was trained as a meteorological observer, which meant my job was to predict fogs. Okay, that was it. And anyway, I spent my time in Puerto Rico, great duty. I was in and out of the Army before I was 20 years old. A little later on, after going to college, I was drafted by the Central Intelligence Agency. Most of you don't know about that, probably. I didn't last very long. I wasn't very good at lying, number one. Number two, I didn't like the idea that my parents thought I was working for someone else. And I guess number three, well, let's put it this way, I don't do very well at blackmailing people, and that was part of the thing. When you had someone you're working with, you had to find something that made them want to be loyal to you. And I didn't want to spend my entire life doing that. So I retired and became a school teacher, high school science teacher. But I'd like to recommend and say that in my mind, everyone, male and female, should be in the volunteer for 2 years in some kind of military service or some kind of service to our country.
Yes, good job.
Hi, Gary Olershaw. If I talk funny, it's because the dentist worked me over today. I was RA 189, and I can't remember the rest of the numbers. RA meant regular Army. I volunteered to be in the Army. I wanted to learn a trade, so I went in to be a welder. So I learned how to weld, and then Uncle Sam didn't know what to do with us. So then they made us instructors. We just got out of welding school just 2 days before. For you who've been in the military, you know how that goes. So then they didn't know what to do with us, so then we had an opportunity to go to advanced training, which the pay grade would be E5, specialist grade, not a buck sergeant, not hard stripes. And I figured, well, if I'm going to Vietnam, I'd rather make $340 a month than $80 a month. So volunteered. There was 10 of us. And then again, the Army didn't know what to do with us. So we became teachers. And so we were instructed the graveyard shift, which was good because then we didn't have to do inspections. And after that, 5 went to Europe, which I was one of the 5. And the other 5 stayed in the States. And shortly after that, they discontinued the program. So I was stationed in Darmstadt, which is south of Frankfurt. So I jokingly say I learned about beer and Fraulines. I did find a Fraulein, and that was my first wife. We have 2 boys. And she lives in Salem now, as a naturalized citizen. And so I was there till 1970, came home, honorable discharge, and I was done with the military. I kind of agree with John. It'd be nice if some of the younger people could learn the military way of doing things and also learn some structure. So my nickname in the Army was Pops, because I always was loaning money out. Because of being E5, I had money. So, and I had a 57 Volkswagen, so I was also a chauffeur. And I got to tell this, which is not the right thing to say, but I was only burned by one guy, and it was a white guy. I didn't charge interest. So, yep.
I'm Roland White, and I'm going to read this, was left on the table real quick here. Dear veterans, this person's learning to print. I might not know you, but I know you serve for our country and for my life and the whole country, and you might have been in the Air Force, Coast Guard, and you might have been a Marine. Thank you. I look up to you. I want to be a Marine. And thank you. You really want to serve. Thank you. Your friend Tucker. Oh. Anyway, my period of service was 62 to 66, so I was just ahead of Vietnam. So I got out and things were going to build up over there. But in the Air Force, I first spent 6 months in an electronics training school to monitor radar with a scope in front of me. Well, my class was shipped to Japan, the northern island of Hokkaido, the most northern point called Wakanai, and we were monitoring Russian radar activity. Well, they got overstaffed, so they asked for volunteers, and I got tired of going through 10 feet of snow. It was that deep up there in the winter, and so my hand went up, and I went to the southern island of Kyushu, so it's like going from Nome, Alaska to San Diego. And so I had to cross-train, and I went into, became a mechanic on aircraft. One of the reasons I went in the service, I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I spent a year and a half at Portland State. I decided I needed a break, grow up, whatever. And so becoming a jet, there was jet fighters there in Japan, and then 2 years in Georgia later, another aircraft. I decided I'd get out and go back to college and went into mechanical engineering, and that became my career. But I think that I had the opportunity to be a mechanic on airplanes, or that wouldn't have happened. I had a wonderful time.
My name is Don Lee, and my story is not so untypical because 15 days after I graduated from Oregon State, I got my draft notice. We decided that it was probably smarter to commit to 4 years and maybe survive than it was to commit to 2 and be on the ground and be in harm's way in that direction. So I enlisted into the Air Force, and with the promise of going on to officers training school, and as those promises go, I ended up as a life support specialist. And my first station was in Del Rio, Texas, where there's a beautiful UPT undergraduate pilot training base, and my responsibility was to maintain, well, first of all, I guess the part of it was we, first of all, was that we had to train the students and how to use their life support equipment then maintain it and so forth. So the life support equipment included their helmets, their parachutes, their masks, their locator beacon, and oxygen system, onboard oxygen system, and so forth. So it was limited to that. We had T-41s, which was a prop plane as a training program. T-37s, a little Tweety Bird, side-by-side Tweety Bird we call it, because the engines just screamed. And the T-38 high-performance white plane with a 7-foot wingspan. So we had really a very great experience with that, working so closely with the pilots and really learning to respect and to appreciate the quality of those people. When the academy class came through, it was just the cream de creme. And so these people were just outstanding individuals. And we enjoyed getting close to them and lived off base. Nancy and I were married and lived off base and had that experience of recognizing the lieutenant and the colonel and so forth, because everything was very serious on the base. And then when we got off the base, of course, everything was much more casual, and we could call mark and so on. So that was just a great experience. One of the highlights, I think, of that tour is that we went TDY to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington, and the area, the northwest area, ROTC kids who were going to go off to pilot school, or we were trying to get them to go off to pilot school. This is the Vietnam era. We're in the heat of it at that moment. And so we were trying to charge these young men, these young ROTC students, into the business. So we would take the T-38 and pick it up off the deck at about 10 feet, and then do a burner climb with a student on the end of the runway. And so, of course, that was a big thrill, and it was short. The short bend was short enough so that the G-forces were serious; they could feel them, but not quite pass out. So, and the story was that was a great experience. The interaction that we had with the pilots, because we were all instructor pilots, was just fantastic. They took a few of us airmen out on a town Saturday night after we were finished again. So we really got close and had just great experiences. Another highlight was getting the people clear, but Nancy worked in town at the bank, at one of the banks, and so we really got a chance to integrate with the community. And so we were invited, amazingly, we were invited to a lot of parties and barbecues and family gatherings, and we had full, unlimited use of a boat, and a beautiful boat. And so we spent virtually every weekend in the summertime, which there was between April and November, on the boat, and just had lots of fun entertaining the new pilots that would come and live in our complex. So that endeared us to the wonderful people of Texas, and we almost stayed. That would have been healthier. I think that was a clinch. I think that we just could come home, but it was a phenomenal experience. Don't regret 1 minute of it. And like these other veterans have said, is that it would be great if each of us had that experience, and each young person had that experience. So I think there is an opportunity there, and then still an encouragement. I mean, things have changed, of course, in the military from when we were there, but bottom line is that there is an opportunity, an education, and an opportunity to serve. And I tell you, but still today, when that flag goes down in the parade ground or on the arena or at the football game, I still can get chills in my back, and I know I'm not alone in that, because we learn what life is like and what our freedom is all about. So thank you for this opportunity.
Hi, my name is John Paul Montre. I served in the Air Force for 17 years, 97 to 2014. Kind of joined right out of high school. Navy tried to get me, but I told them I couldn't swim, so I joined the Air Force. And then after that, they trained me up on communication electronics. My first job was to kind of maintain cryptographic systems, and they were behind the times. Like back then, they were still working with 60s equipment in the 90s, and just walls of computer systems. We could pull out drawers, pull out boards, do diodes and transistors and all that stuff. And we don't even have those anymore. most of our technology. But that was in Okinawa, Japan. That was just an excellent place to start off an Air Force career. Scuba diving and learn, well, it was a lot of drinking, but that was what was to do there. Turns out I wasn't very good at my job once we started transitioning from the big cards that we pulled out to just kind of installations and just very computer stuff, not the hardware kind of maintenance. So as the jobs changed, I almost electrocuted myself once, but I fell off the ladder, so that saved me. And I did a lot of kind of extra jobs when like augmenting. So I did security forces for a little bit, helped them out, watch the planes on the runways. I did, well, I was a victim advocate for sexual assault victims for a while, and that was rewarding work, important, but like we kept trying to tell ourselves, you know, we just have to keep working at this until our job goes away. So that was an interesting, important time when I was in California. And yeah, the biggest, really, I think the highlight of my career is when we were, I was assigned to a, what do they call it, it sent us out to be first in a place where we didn't have a presence already. So if something was kind of brewing, or we did a lot of humanitarian efforts, like we helped with Hurricane Katrina, well, and Hurricane Sandy, things like that. We would deploy and get communication set up, because we bring our satellite antenna and kind of get everything ready for everybody else to come in. So, and I worked with a lot of brilliant people during that time. It's just the intelligence of the people that I worked with never ceased to amaze me, and I'm really proud of that time. But other than that, I really don't have a whole lot of stories, so I'll stop rambling. Yeah, thank you very much.
My name's Sharan Klein. I served in the Army from 1988 through 1991. And I joined the Army primarily because my family was in construction, and I spent all my time a year after high school working construction, and I was sick and tired of it, and I wanted to do something else. I didn't know what that was, so I decided to join the Army, and that's quite honestly why I joined up. A chance to sort of get out of my current environment and try something new. And it was the best decision I ever made. Really good. Gave me an opportunity to see the whole world, meet people that I didn't know existed, learn about places and environments and things that I was completely unaware of. You know, I got to jump out of airplanes, and I got to rappel out of helicopters and walk vast distances through cold and rain in the mountains, and all sorts of crazy things. But it was a good time for me, and I would say that I'm often amazed by myself about how much those 3 years affected my whole life. Really built a foundation in me of thinking and working and discipline that I hadn't had before. And I recommend really anybody to do a 2-year stint if you can, because it gives you a chance to sort of open your eyes to what else exists. Because it's amazing getting out of your little town, wherever that happens to be, and seeing where everybody else is. So I served in the 82nd Airborne Division for about a year and a half. For them, I was in an infantry company. So I was airborne infantry, and then I was a scout and a sniper for them. So our job was to go out in front of the company and kind of see what was out there, report back, and then eliminate any problems that might be brewing, and kind of working through that. And that was interesting. Sniper school to this day. It was only 3 weeks long, and I went as a PV2, so an E2, you know, just a buck private, and I went in, and it was a class of 23 people, all pretty good soldiers, and only 10 graduated. And so the attrition rate was pretty rough going through that. And that was honestly one of the most physically and mentally demanding things I've ever done. You know, and I have a doctorate now, so I mean, it was tough when I was 20 years old working through that. But it was also amazing. It was just an amazing experience, learning what you could do beyond what you think you could do. You know, pushing that. So I served with them for about a year and a half, and then I got levied to Germany. And I got sent to Germany, and when I was in Germany, I was served with a long-range surveillance company, and that was for 7th Corps, which served about 100,000 troops, so we were sort of part of the intelligence division for them. So what we'd do is we'd go out. This was Cold War time, right? So we were set up right in Cold War. Our mission was kind of Czechoslovakia area, and we'd go out and we'd set up, you know, hide sites and that kind of thing to let people know what was coming back and identify the different information. And this was before we had great access to satellites and drones and things like that. That stuff really didn't exist back then. In fact, when I went to the Gulf War, which I'll tell you in a second, the Gulf War was the first time anybody had ever heard of GPS, and it was top secret at the time. You know, not anybody's got it on the phone, but at the time, nobody heard of this thing, completely top secret. We had to get it because navigating across a flat desert is quite different than navigating through the mountains of Germany or North Carolina or wherever I'd been stationed, because there's no landmarks as you're working through it. So we had to learn about that. But anyway, it was an interesting experience. I also really enjoyed the environment that I was in. I said when I was in North Carolina in the 82nd, it was about being a soldier first, but when I went to Europe, it was about being a tourist first. And so spent a lot of time, running through the mountains of Austria and Germany, and going down to Italy and then to France and meeting folks. And I went and saw Roger Waters at the Wall concert in Berlin. This is right after the Berlin Wall fell and all that. That was fun. That was really a lot of fun. And meet different people. I got to go to international schools, which were NATO schools. So I'd go to these schools that had Greek soldiers and Italians and British and Canadians and learn with them, and that was an amazing experience. Again, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. Then I moved that unit to the 1st Gulf War as part of that situation. Then when I came out, 7th Corps was mostly packed up, and they were ready to pull because the Cold War had ended. So we were ready to pull 100,000 troops out of Germany, and they said, "Anybody want to get out early?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for that." And out I came. So I got out a little bit early and started college. So.
I'd like to add something that I didn't bring up, but others have, and I want to reinforce that idea or the opportunity when you're in the military. You're not at home anymore. You might end up in a different part of the United States, different part of the world. I grew up in Portland, Southwest Portland, basically a white part of Portland. And when you go into the military's integrated. It was back in '62. And I had no issues with it. I enjoyed whoever I worked with. But when you're in different places, you don't spend all your 24 hours a day on the base. You work there, maybe put in your 8 or 10 hours, and you had a barracks to sleep in, but you had some free time. So bases were almost close to a town. So those 2 towns I'll quickly mention. Earlier I said I went to northern Japan, and Wakkanai was a fishing village. So I was on a base on a radar site up above the town. So I got to be a little acquainted with Japanese for the first time in my life, and the people, fishermen, simple way of life, very simple. After Japan, I went back south, Mississippi and Georgia, and that was in '64 to '66. And when you go off base to walk out of the front gates of the base, one town was Biloxi, and the other one was Macon, Georgia. And if you were white, you go this way once you got out the gate. If you were black, you went that way. There was different parts of town, and you didn't go to the other one. And in between, remember the junction where you go either way with public restrooms, men, women, and colored. This is in the mid-'60s. So I was very naive when I went in the military, but I lost some of that naivety. Native. But it's a good experience to go in the military because you'll learn more than just how to carry a rifle.
I'd like to make a couple more comments also. I was, like I said, 18 years old when I first went in. The first thing that happened to me was that I was U.S., which meant I was drafted. I was sitting on my footlocker. This was the second day in the Army. And this guy came up to me and says, "Are you U.S.?" And I didn't even know what it meant. And I said, "Well, I guess." And he looked up with a little tag up there. "Yes, you're U.S. You come with me." I thought, "What?" Well, at that time, the regular Army, this is 1957, regular Army guys, RAs, guys that had enlisted. U.S. were guys that had been drafted. So we literally changed bunks. We had this young guy come up, the same my age, and I went with him, and it sort of changed my life. I was with adults all of a sudden. These were guys that were kind of angry because they'd been yanked out of college, they got their draft notice, and so I grew up in a hurry, but also I learned a lot. I was also in Puerto Rico as a weather person. I was out forecasting the weather. We didn't know why we were doing it, but it was for the downwind from Canaveral for the space program. I also met every day with people from Puerto Rico, and we would have lunch with them. I learned some Spanish. I don't know it now, but it was an exciting experience. When I got home, I was a different person. And once again, I'll reiterate, I think that everyone should have to spend 2 years at least in service to their country, men and women.
Could I say something, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah.
Coming off of what your gentleman talked about, that the young adults should at least do a 2-year or more, get the experience. So really quick, because I know we're short on time. So my husband, who is the love of my life and my soulmate, was homeless his entire life, from the time he was a small boy all the way through high school. Played football in high school, got fair grades enough to keep playing football, was part of choir, but he was homeless. They lived in tents, they lived in their car. If he didn't get a free meal from the school, he didn't eat. He was born and raised in Oregon City. And they lived in the woods most of the time, anywhere. And they ate, he goes, and it's really sad, he goes, we would eat birds or squirrel. Because if it was some form of food, this is what you ate, or you went hungry. And it was his choir teacher. He was so concerned because he had an older brother and younger brothers who had all dropped out of school. Middle school, the 2 younger already dropped out. The older brother, who was a year older than him, he had left his freshman year. He was the only child that had continued to get through high school. His choir teacher said, "Go in the military. It will change your life. I want you to get out of the situation you're in." He graduated from high school, the only child of the entire family that ever graduated. Even his parents never graduated. He graduated, signed up for the Navy, ended up on the USS Midway in Japan. He was worked with the jets as well as supplies, but it was top secret supplies, so they would fly him into other countries or to a place called Diego Garcia, and you would pick up these supplies, you would take it. And he served 5 years, and the only reason why he left after 5 years is his mother was desperate need to help with the boys that were still growing at home, and he felt obligated to go back to his family. He said he walked out of the gates on his last day, broke down crying, said he turned around, looked at the gate and said, "I need to go back. I have to go back." But family was stronger than that. He believes to this day, he's works in telecommunications. He was a lineman for 25 years. Works in telecommunications, and one of the nicest guys you would ever meet. Give you the shirt off his back, the most respectful to all age groups. Believes there's a greater good in everybody. Loves life, loves God, and like he said, he goes, if it wasn't for his choir teacher, and if it wasn't, in fact, for military and what he did, he goes, it would have been a different outcome. He believes that he would have either been in jail or just wandering the earth. So I commend you all for what you've done. I'm proud of my husband every day for the fact of what he did to change his life. So thank you.
Josh. I need to make a closing comment. This hall you're in is for the veterans of foreign wars. Serving in the military bonds you to your fellows, but serving in wartime adds to that. And this group is formed to support each other, and there are a lot of people who are damaged by their service in wartime. They get PTSD or they get physically damaged. And this organization was founded to support those people. So when you hear of VFW events or something, please keep that in mind. Support your VFW. If you have served in a congressionally declared war zone, consider joining. You don't have to come to the stupid meetings we have, but your contribution and your volunteer would be appreciated. They give us the hall for free. They don't usually do that because we were honoring our veterans. So just wanted to say, appreciate the place. There's a place like this in almost every town in the United States.
I won't wrap it up further, Ann. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for getting the hall for us.
Sure.
John, thanks for getting us set up here.
If I miss checking in, please see me.
Yeah. Veterans, thank you.
We'll hang around.
Yeah, we'll hang around. I think we have plenty of time. There's lots
Tons
of extra food.
please take
Lots of
it.
extra food. There's cookies. There is water. Ridge View, Key Clubbers. Hopefully you can take advantage of this because I can't necessarily get out of there for...
If there's more of these, grab some and hand them out when you're in a business downtown.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for your participation. Veterans, thank you. We're dismissed.